So I'm going to jump the fence to the acquired category. Randy, Ablation Frontiers was acquired by Medtronic in early 2009. Were you seeking an acquisition, and if so, how did you go about attracting Medtronic?
No, we weren't actually out looking for to be acquired. We built the company on some of the same principles that's just mentioned. We wanted to be able to get our technology into the human use arena. So we went outside the U.S. because the FDA is a very uncertain path. So we went to Europe, and we had built up some really significant traction in the European marketplace. We didn't try to go really broad. We tried to stay fairly focused and go real deep. So what we were able to do is, in every center that we went to with our technology, we were able to show that we became the dominant technology used for treatment of atrial fibrillation in that center. And as we became the dominant technology or that leading market share in that center, we would branch out 1 or 2 sites at a time. Late 2008, we were out raising our next round, which would have been a D round to finance the U.S. clinical trial. We completed the U.S. feasibility, the market crashed. Some of the people we were talking to on Wall Street instantly went away. Having said that, all along the way, we've been talking to the corporate people, letting them know what we were doing. The Medtronics, the Boston Science, the Abbotts, and such. And so when we got to a point, the traditional D-round folks are gone, we had to make a decision. We either start talking to the corporate partners, or we're going to have to do something unique within the current VCs that were already invested in the organization. And we were fortunate because of the traction we made in Europe, showing market adoption, the technology safe, very effective, lots of data being published out of Europe. We got their interest, and we were fortunate that between the 4 major companies, we had each one of them offering acquisitions, and we ended up going with Medtronic.
So what drove that decision?
Price.
And Ronnie, Clarient was acquired by GE Healthcare in October of last year for $580 million, above the average. And how did that deal get done, and what steps did your company take to prepare itself?
You know, similar to what we've heard already, we started Clarient because a few of us were at Roche Molecular. We were a little frustrated in what was going on in cancer. All these technology companies up and down the coast had a hammer, and every problem then was a nail. We knew cancer wasn't a nail. It's a very complex disease, polygenomic, therefore many pathways can be utilized to communicate that code. We saw the pharmaceutical companies in our years at Roche, who were licensing PCR for development. They were looking at shutting down these pathways, not down-regulating the genes. But no one was addressing this holistic approach to the Google map of the cell, where we identified who's going to respond and who's not going to respond to these drugs. So when Roche decided they weren't interested in that anymore, it went off and did a nice deal with Affymetrix. A few of us said, let's go do it ourselves. So we inherited a bankrupt public company here that had a technology that could really identify and quantify proteins in cells, which was the holy grail to these therapeutic selection or therapeutic questions. And so one of the things I learned in my years in molecular diagnostics before I just went to start Clarient was, if you follow complex therapeutic decisions with complex diagnostics, there's going to be enough reimbursement value to create significant value. And you'll probably, if you follow the right drug companies, you'll probably get massive uptake pretty rapidly. So when we started Clarient, our goal was really threefold. It was never to really exit. The goal was, first off, to really change the way breast cancer was managed in rural communities. So we had sort of an altruistic slant. A lot of us came into this with a very passionate, background for cancer, because many of us had family members that had breast cancer, and so we wanted to do something different. You can tell from the accent, it's not a California accent. I'm from rural Georgia, and my grandmother who had cancer for 36 years was treated extremely differently than a person that lived in downtown Atlanta and could go to Emory University. So our goal was to understand that the only difference between the guy at Emory and the guy in these rural communities was access to valuable diagnostic information that could help them select the right therapy out of the gate and give that patient the best chance to survive. So we decided we were going to build a company around that, and that was our focus. And along the way, we would create a channel but use overwhelming commercial force in very specific markets, not try to be too broad, as well as along the way build an amazing development capability in both the genomic and proteomic side to really understand cancer, because we knew the pharma companies didn't have that. And so the idea was to really build a business unit that could be plugged into a larger company someday, with the idea that we'd go back to Roche, who I knew had an interest, but at the time didn't want to invest in it. So we always knew one day we would do something like that, but we really weren't expecting it when I got the call from Jeff Immelt. And so when that call came, and some of you heard the story, I was sitting in our conference room, and my assistant knocked on the door, stuck her head and said, "Ronnie, do you know Jeff Immelt?" And everybody laughed, and I said, "Well, I know who he is, but I don't know Jeff Immelt." And next thing you know, she was on the phone, and I go, "Great." So I figured it was one of my friends busting my chops. So I told her, "Tell Jeff I'll call him back in 10. So she went and told the chairman of GE that I'd call him back in 10. So when I went and got the little slip and saw it was a 212 number, I said, "Uh-oh, this isn't good." So I called, and Kathy answered, and she said, "This is Jeff Immelt." So I said, "Oh, you will not believe what I just did." But anyway, it turned out well. Jeff and I had dinner, and 6 months later, we had a deal. So it was a really fast process, but I think there's a lot of passion on both sides. They needed what we had, and we needed what they had, and they basically took us private. So they're really not really integrated Clarient. They basically bought us, got us off the public market, and now we're investing heavily in what our vision was before that we really couldn't find as a public company. So.
Great, thank you. So that was a pretty big deal. Randy, I think your experience pre-Ablation Frontiers with your patented technology would be a good experience to share with some of the companies that are smaller, that may not have a lot of infrastructure around the product to sell. You can share that.
So I look at there's two ways to go. If you have a patent portfolio, if it's good enough, there's some that are good enough to start a company around, and there's some that makes a good product. The ones that make a good product are what I call like cupcake deals. It's not the big cake, but it looks pretty good. And I like those because I can totally control that myself. I can file patents and find an opportunity and create some value without having to go through all that is around raising venture capital funding, getting diluted, hiring a team, going to market, and all that. So it's a way of being innovative and creative without having to put your life on the line. Because once you start the company, as everybody probably knows, it's 24/7. For 5 years during Ablation Frontiers, I had no vacations. It's in 2007, I did 26 trips to Europe. I mean, it's all that. You do whatever it takes to get that job done. Whereas putting together a patent portfolio, you can continue to assess it, put it together, talk to the folks that have an interest in the various marketplaces, and if things do go well, then you can get a nice return on your time and investment. So it just depends on the scope of what the problem you're trying to solve.